right, as the hush dies down here, we're going to get ready to introduce our next two speakers. It is going to be a joint presentation by these two fine individuals from opposite sides of the Interstate 40 corridor, so to speak, the way I see it. So we've got Mr. Eric Hoke, who's joining us from Nashville, and Kate Cavazza from Charlotte. Eric, I'm going to read these directly. I apologize. I wish these are really incredible write-ups. I wish I knew them inside and out, but I don't, and I don't want to do you justice. So Eric holds a bachelor's degree in interior architecture from Ohio University and joined the Civic Design Center team in 2012. He was a board member of Transit Now Nashville and served as vice president. He was part of WeGo, Public Transit's Better Bus Committee, is an alum of the Urban Land Institute's Health Leaders Network, was on Smart Growth America's Complete Streets Leadership Academy Committee, and has represented the Civic Design Center on the Mayor's Sustainability Advisory Committee and Connect Middle Tennessee Transit Coalition, where he continues his passion for sustainability, transportation, advocacy, and design. And I can tell you last night after our conversation, he is and truly passionate about all of those. So as director of the design studio, Eric has been involved in most of the last decade of projects at the Civic Design Center in various capacities. Some of his favorites include prioritizing pedestrian safety on Dickerson, envisioning a new park in Madison, and working on the new East Bank neighborhood. Mr. Eric Hoke. Next to him, on his right, coxswain rowing the boat, is Kate Cavazza, an associate urban designer and planner at the City of Charlotte Urban Design Center. She manages the Placemaking Grant Program, a community building initiative that supports quick wins and transformative projects throughout the city to create and enhance community vibrancy, safety, and identity. She has a master's in political science from Lehigh University and a bachelor's in political science and French language studies from Susquehanna University. She is passionate about connecting community members to planning, urban design, and policy resources to make positive changes in the built environment. She spends every minute, and I don't think I'm over-exaggerating here, every minute not in the office, on the water, rowing, rafting, or training for a regatta. So, Ms. Kate Cavazza. Who's getting this?
Yeah,
that's you. Okay.
Hey everyone, this is awesome. It's so exciting to be here with everyone and to talk about, I think, both of our, at least some of our favorite subjects. So we thought, since we both work for design centers, that we'd sort of combine our presentations here and then talk about some of the similarities and differences between nonprofit formed design center and a government formed one. So yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Well, hey everybody. My name is Kate Cavazza. I'm an associate urban designer and planner at the City of Charlotte's Urban Design Center. Just a little bit about the Urban Design Center before we start. We were launched in 2016. We're the newest division of the planning department. We are a multidisciplinary staff of 7 people. We got landscape architects, planners, designers, one public policy person. And we work together to advance the quality of Charlotte's built environment and increase the awareness of public design. And we do that, our buckets fall into 3 categories, right? We work on consultancy, where our staff works with interdepartmental partners. We work with our long-range planning team, our area transit, and we're subject matter experts for the city in terms of fabric design. We also do studio programming, where we open our studio space. So we have this amazing building. We've been excommunicated from the government center uptown. We're in the heart of South End on our light rail station. We opened this amazing space up for community education, as well as being a hub for the design community in Charlotte. And then our third bucket is placemaking. Placemaking to us is smaller processes where we work with community members to put these quick wins into execution. And that's where I come in, and I'm really excited to share about our smaller scale projects and how we can put this into put projects on the street from a placemaking perspective and through the other municipalities.
And that's me. So if you're on the gram, follow me, Eric Hoke, Design Director at the Civic Design Center.
Ooh, yeah, sorry.
I have a few. So the Civic Design Center's mission is to advocate for civic design visions and actionable change in communities to improve the quality of life for all. And so we do that through, these are our guiding principles for civic design. And so these are, the type of work we do really spans the gambit. I mean, everything from public space to streets, to transportation advocacy, environments, housing, we sort of touch it in all aspects of our work. So that's why I love this group of folks, because I think like the beautification efforts lead to a lot of the planning efforts that we try to tackle. So excited to talk to you about some of our work, and hopefully you can be inspired and maybe we can collaborate on something. So, and I guess I'll say we set up our project in sort of these, or our presentation in sort of these three sections. So the first section is addressing interstate barriers, which I think Jack discussed very well and set us up nicely for the our talk. And then reclaiming public space is sort of the second phase, and then community collaboration. So that's what we're in for.
Thank you. So to set it up, Charlotte is a city of just 900,000 people, and we have about 2 million people in our county. We are the 15th largest city in the US, and we're the 5th fastest growing city. By 2030, we're supposed to get another million people. But our story is not unique. We also suffer from urban renewal projects. We're 50th out of 50 largest metros in terms of economic mobility. I should have put a map of Charlotte up here to give you a larger context, but we have concentric interstate problems. Our city is both racially and economically segregated, and we refer to this segmentation as the crescent and the wedge. The north section of Charlotte is the wedge with everybody, and then the wedge is the bottom south section of affluence. And our work is geographically spread across the entire city, and the Urban Arboretum Trail is a reflection of a project that reconnects historically African-American neighborhoods that have been segregated by the Federal Highway Act with the goal of preserving tree canopy. This is a project that's been going on for about 5 years. It's a partnership between the Urban Design Center, the Tree Canopy Preservation, and our urban forestry folks in placemaking. Some of the elements along this trail are reconnections under interstates. It's more of a quick win, right? So we're working with community members to identify these small scale connections over a 5-mile loop. So the loop goes from our uptown section in that bottom corner up to our only Tier 1 Arboretum in the Pinewood Elmwood Cemetery. It's a stitching together on a much smaller scale than the stitch. I'd like to use the word lace. Like, we are using existing infrastructure to connect these neighborhoods and putting together connectors. We were lucky enough to work with CDOT and finally get some signage together to mark our bicycle route. The Urban Arboretum Trail is also about gathering spaces. When we talk about infrastructure and our aging community as well, our Greenville neighborhood in the top corner is predominantly older folk who have been in their homes for years. So we are focusing on gathering spaces and making this walkable, accessible, and putting some parking around these spaces to put the focus on community space, gathering, and tree canopy preservation. Our next project that I would like to talk about, it's a little bit removed from the Urban Arboretum Trail, but this is our I-77 Trade Street underpass mural. This is the largest mural in the city. It's 133 feet long, and it has a mirror on the other side. We worked with a local artist, and it tells the story of displacement in the city. But in terms of the bureaucratic side of this mural represents an opportunity where we worked with NCDOT, the Public Art Commission. The Public Art Commission at NCDOT has to review every single public art installation in the right-of-way for any city project. Before this mural, every project had to go through city council. And in 2019, we got sick of doing that, and our planning director was able to work when we put a joint resolution together to make it so when a public art project is coming through the pipeline, we don't have to wait to get city council approval. There's a blanket approval with any public art, and that saves time. It reduces barriers to getting these things on the ground. Because the NCDOT process takes 6 months of review anyway. We don't want to make communities wait in this interim process for putting something beautiful in the right-of-way. And we're really proud of that change. It might not be a giant, sparkling, piece of legislation, but it makes it easier for our communities to approach art in disused spaces. Pass it off.
Yeah, I love the sort of processes that lead to the simplification of those things. I think that helps to implement projects. So to continue on our interstate barriers journey, if I can find, there we go. Sorry, giving them away. So rewind back to Nashville in 1995. This was a cover of the Scene, if you're familiar, it's a local magazine there, from one of the founders of our organization prior to our organization existing. So the sentiment of this was around a proposal from TDOT to build an interstate style piece of infrastructure literally right through the center of downtown Nashville. And so this was actually a map from TDOT that was presented to the community that if you're familiar with Nashville at all, Korean Veterans Boulevard is where this was proposed. So it really would have separated what is now the Sobro area of downtown completely from existing downtown area. So there was a group that met regularly called the Urban Design Forum. These were just civic advocates, planners, architects, people involved in discussions on a monthly basis. And we actually continue this program to this day, but they presented an alternative vision. They called it the Franklin Street Corridor, but it was akin to what we see on Korean Veterans Boulevard. It was like a human scale, pedestrian-oriented, walkable street where you could pretty easily cross at any block where you felt it was appropriate. And so they were actually successful in presenting TDOT this alternative vision and lobbying and getting community support to build the street as a more livable street, I guess I would say. And so from that moment, they felt that we needed a government or a entity to do this consistently. So they formed the Civic Design Center around this publication, which is called The Plan in Nashville. The Plan in Nashville is based on the Plan of Chicago, but it basically presents a 40-year vision for the city. And so this was in the early 2000s that this was published, and still informs, and out of that yielded the guiding principles, which I showed earlier, but it still guides the work and a lot of what we do today. So a big part of the Plan in Nashville was this. This is the East Bank, if you're familiar with Nashville. It's right across the river, the Cumberland River from downtown. Largely industrial, historic shipbuilding area, but currently houses the Tennessee Titans Stadium and a lot of parking. So that's sort of the Tennessee Titans were new to the area in 1999. The stadium was complete, and so it happened right around the time that the Plan in Nashville was happening. So this was a big focus of the Plan in Nashville: is how do we utilize this huge, literally 300 acres, basically in downtown Nashville, and reinvent it for communities. And so this was a vision from the plan that was created. And I think it was pretty forward thinking because a lot of the ideas talked about what we called the urban boulevard, and it's this sort of Arc de Triomphe looking bridge and big civic circle were what they thought the people who were involved in that process at the time thought the interstate should look like in the future. So I say that to, and a lot of excitement and energy. This was an article from the Tennessean that talked about the radical suggestion that it was. So then fast forward to this year, this was a rendering that was put out actually just a few weeks ago by Perkins Eastman, who's the developer basically working on the site plan for this. So it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, we heard about the Stitch and sort of the legacy of the project, like it takes time, and we still haven't seen a ton of movement, but we're implementing plans, and they've issued master developers for large sections of this area. A lot of the consolidation of the interstate ramps, you know, it's sort of the baby steps, you know, the simple, quick wins, you know, simple things like that. Another thing I wanted to mention too around interstate barriers is this is an area of North Knoxville, so just due north of downtown, but this is actually a great resource, and there's it's from the Tennessee State Archives, and there's actually a big section in here about East Knoxville too. So if you're interested in this, it's really cool. It's like an interactive storytelling online feature, and if you've never looked at it before, you can see like historic street grids, you know, the way they were built, and then overlay it with the contemporary street grid, which you see here. So Jefferson Street is a very important street for Nashville and Music City, and really the country. Like Jimi Hendrix got his start on Jefferson Street. Lots of great music history comes from Jefferson Street. But in the mid-century, this road was basically bifurcated by the interstate into, you know, it creates, you can see it's sort of the three sections, which also is home to our HBCUs and many other important cultural institutions. So a lot of devastation happened from this. And so I included this just so you can see, like, these were the historic clubs that housed a lot of the sort of origins of American music. And it happened right here on Jefferson Street. I can't even tell you like the names that come off of these clubs, but a lot of great ones. And so, but you can see like where they're positioned on this little map on the side. They're, you know, they completely destroyed. These buildings don't exist anymore. They've been fell out of disrepair and demolished and removed. There's one of them is left standing today. And there's been efforts to sort of revitalize and reconnect, and they're valiant and good. This is a project called Gateway to Heritage, where probably not as heavy of an investment as Walk Birmingham, but you know, there was sort of the thoughts and ideas behind that with installing arts, like reminiscing of history and historic moments, but still hasn't really seen the investment that it needs. Then fast forward again, another publication in 2016. This is called Shaping Healthy Community, the Nashville Plan, but it's basically a diagnosis of different community types and suggests health interventions across Nashville, but could be applied pretty much anywhere. And so enter more of these capping conversations in North Nashville. And I included these just to show you that we've been thinking a lot about highway capping, but not a ton of movement until 2020. Then we introduced a new transportation plan and put this little price tag on it, $175 million for, this is a reconnecting Jefferson Street project basically. And so this came from the Congress for New Urbanism, did a charrette process with our community, and then it was sort of re-released to the public recently and had basically no community engagement or thought. So there was a lot of resistance to the project, and so it kind of stalled out. But that's where this is a sort of a clip I took from one of our projects that shows and tries to address some of the needs that we heard in one of those community meetings and say, let's not just scrap it. Let's try to introduce some of the needs that the community said. So all that to say, we haven't actually made a ton of progress on highway capping, but I think hopefully that, you know, just having the visions and the visuals can help inspire change and then maybe set us up to apply for some of that federal money. So yeah, I guess.
Very fun.
Yeah.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Hey!
So these are planted discussion moments.
We didn't talk beforehand. No. So as we think about the longevity of these projects, you know, how do you keep public interest in your projects as we move forward?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge question, and just the more engagement that, I mean, it's hard. Engagement takes time, energy, money, like all those things, and you just have to. I think that's sort of the benefit of an organization like ours is that we can put that into sort of beating the drum around these ideas and the importance of reconnecting and restitching, relacing communities. So yeah, I mean, it's not easy, but you got to just keep championing ideas and keep having these types of discussions where you can, think big about connections to East Knoxville or things like that. But,
Yeah. And as a government person and you're sitting in the municipal square, it is so important to have that advocacy connection and to have the partnership, to have a fork in your side, to be able to be like, these are the relevant projects, this is what we need. And as staff to embrace that conflict and be like, yes, let's talk. And that, I feel like that always spurs conversation in the community sphere, and it helps on the public side as well.
So can I ask you a question?
I would be delighted, yes.
I'm curious about, so a lot of the engagement process, we search for artists and things like that in our communities, and I love the projects you've shown us, and love to hear about sort of the selection process for the arts that went on to inform the designs for the project.
Yeah, thank you. It teased me up for a section later on, but one of the cool things about public art in the public sphere is it's so visible, and to have, with our grant selection process in particular, it starts with an interdepartmental staff selection committee. So this is pulled together from CDOT, our Housing and Neighborhood Services, people are on the panel, other government staff, grantees, but we also have practitioners. So we have muralists who have completed other city projects before. They sit in and weigh on the feasibility of this project. Like, if we cannot put a mural, on the side of a skyscraper. Random things that come up all the time, like what kind of paint do we use in offering that technical assistance. But it's also taking our selection and taking it back to the public. The Urban Arboretum Trail is a great example of that's a project that's been going on for 5 years. The selection of the neighborhood artists have come directly from the people who have worked there. And we only know that because we have been on the ground ourselves. So working with our apartment complex on the route, they were pulled into that review committee, but it's being open and accepting all the perspectives that come in making it transparent. The more you can put it on public input, the better.
Yeah, I think that speaks to a lot of our discussion about just the more robust engagement you can do. I think just the more powerful and emphasis your project will have. So.
Nice. And that brings us to the placemaking program. This is my pride and joy. There are 5 main components to our placemaking program. It's our grant work, it's our creative pool, which I will talk about with our artist selection, larger capital projects, and our placemaking hub. This is an image that was awarded to our farmers market this year. We have our City of Charlotte Uptown Cycle Track. This is a major project that's been underway for 5 years to reconnect Uptown to our neighbors. And the Uptown Farmers Market is in the parking lot behind, and they applied for a grant to beautify this is not the bike lane, this is the space between the buffered bike lane and the road, with wayfinding for fruits and vegetables. This is about a $5,000 project with a local artist. Our placemaking grant program was founded in 2019, so we just closed our 4th cycle of grant funding. We used about $200,000 of our budget this year to find 12 new community placemaking projects. These projects create and enhance vibrancy by activating those leftover spaces, the underutilized spaces, the streetscapes that you're like, oof, that needs some work. And installing the public art in these beautification efforts. And our grant program is low barrier to apply. anybody can apply. Individuals, nonprofits, up to our business improvement district applies for grants. And these are some of the funding opportunities that we have done. We've done bus stop improvements, community gardens, the signal cabinet wraps, and it's also the technical assistance that comes with it. We don't expect our community members to know how to navigate the complexities of putting in a swing, for example, and we help facilitate that process. These are some of our favorites throughout the years. Lavanya Parks did a mural on a Rita's Ice sculpture. We did a bus stop, Halim with our Derida neighborhood. That man collected 2,000 plastic bags and molded them into a bench. And I think that speaks to like Charlotte's vibrancy and willingness of our creative community to step in with out of the box, and the city to fund it. Our third image there is Georgie Nakima. She finished that 2 months ago, and that's on the side of Charlotte's newest affordable housing complex, Sugary Place by Dream Key Partners. And in terms of cost, they applied for a $25,000 grant. Hashim had a $5,000 grant for his bus stop, and the next one was the Lions Services. They help people who are visually impaired find jobs, and we wanted a tactile project on the side of their building. And we have on historic West End Charlotte, Charles J. Jones, civil rights activist from Charlotte, and done by Abel Jackson. And so when community members apply for these grants, it's also not a given that you know an artist to go paint a beautiful mural on the side of a building. So in addition to our placemaking grant, we run a creative pool. And this is an administrative fast pass for Charlotte creatives to apply to the city. We set them up in the vendor system. In 2020, we realized as a staff of 6 that we can't weld stuff for people. I can't go paint a bike lane. So we expanded the creative pool to include fabricators, muralists, video producers, creative performers, to help the community tell their story. This is Mixed Metaphors at a West Boulevard production when it's a Vision Zero event. So they were talking about traffic safety. But having this resource available not only to the community, but other city departments, if CDOT wants to paint their bike mural, they'll come to me, put together an RFP, and we can put that to our creative pool of over 60 individuals, and it's expanding every year.
And these people do get paid for what they do.
Of course, yes. Nothing goes to the creative pool without having a budget attached to it. That comes from either Housing and Neighborhood Services, if a project has a cap and they need it, and it also comes out of the placemaking grant as well. To date, we have 50 creatives on our pool, and that's not limited to individuals. Teams can apply, 14 creative organizations. In the past couple of years, we've given out 50 grants, over $600,000, and 28 of those have had works by local artists. And if you're in between cycles, our placemaking hub is our one-stop shop for public realm enhancements. So this is an online resource that is managed by the Urban Design Center, and these links we review them, and it's for community members to put public realm enhancements anytime you want. Like if you want to do a signal cabinet wrap, apply to the placemaking hub, and then we can connect you to the services let's connect you to Duke. Let's connect you to the energy corporation to put your little vinyl cabinet wrap on. It's a one-stop shop that keeps the process moving throughout time. And some of our city quick wins are things that our staff works on in addition to the placemaking hub and the placemaking work. We have installations on our cycle track. We worked on street eateries. Our Black Lives mural was featured in Uptown. And It's the longevity of these projects also, especially with the Black Lives Matter mural. I put this on here as an example of lessons learned. It was during COVID, and Tryon Street, our main artery of Uptown, was shut down. We reopened it. This was a mistake. Instead of pedestrianizing this plaza and taking advantage of that situation of having no traffic, we let business go back to normal, and our Black Lives mural faded. We are working to remedy that with a new vision plan for Uptown. Hopefully we will see a pedestrianized Tryon Street in the near future, and with that comes a reclaiming of space that was previously neglected. All our trees on Tryon Street, you can see, are coming to the end of their lives. So we're revitalizing that space from a city perspective as well. We also do programming and shared streets events, really fun stuff on that as well. Let me turn it over.
Has anyone heard of the term tactical urbanism before? Yeah, something. Okay, well, just in case you haven't, it's been this industry term that's used to describe short term, sort of quick win, experimental type infrastructure, and so I'm going to talk about my experience with tactical urbanism here. So I know Knoxville does Parking Day, and it makes me really excited. One of my favorite days of the year. But if you haven't heard of Parking Day, it happens all around the world. Basically one day a year where people take over parallel parking spots and turn them into what we call parklets, which are these sort of versions of tactical urbanism that are used for advocacy and experimentation on our streets. So this group of people who participated in Parking Day, it was actually a neighborhood group called the Nation's Neighborhood, if you're familiar in Nashville. They would do Parking Day with us every year, and they wanted to do more of this stuff. So they invented this organization called Turbo, which stands for Tactical Urbanism Organizers, and they rallied around this idea of creating a road diet block party along the major corridor in their street. So what they did is the term road diet basically suggests eliminating width of road, I guess is probably the easiest way to describe it. So they worked hard, actually. This was an unprecedented permit in our government. They allowed traffic to move through a block party. That was like a huge, it doesn't sound like much, but it took a lot to get our government to approve that. Yeah. And so they were able to demonstrate that it's not the end of the world to eliminate 2 travel lanes and use the street for something else. And so this was a photo from the block party to show that activation of space. This was the street beforehand. It was a commercial corridor, like there's businesses along here. And as this happened, literally a few days before the block party, an oil tanker exploded on the street. It caused it was a hundreds of foot blast radius. Luckily, the driver survived and no one was killed, but there's a sort of industrial end of this street, and if it happened in this more of the business area, it would have been catastrophic. And so as this happened at the block party, we overlaid the blast radius over there's a music venue called the Stone Fox, and we said if this truck had crashed here, it would have engulfed the Stone Fox in flames. And luckily, the council member was there at the time and was appalled by this and was able to. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's an example of how tactical urbanism can make real change pretty quickly, especially around incidents like disasters and things like that. So currently today, 1 travel lane in each direction, center turn lane, and a 2-way cycle track on one side. So still not perfect. I think ways to go of what we'd like to see. They added some stop signs. It's been improving slowly, but not what, we'll get there with more installations. And then we've seen tactical urbanism in lots of places around our city. This is the first, sadly, Nashville didn't have bike lanes downtown until 2 years ago, and so this was a tactical urbanism project that led to Nashville's first downtown bike lane. We used it on our probably most prominent public space, Broadway, to experiment with what we could do with expanded sidewalks and different types of uses, and then ultimately went on to inform what's there today. And then we've used it for transportation advocacy to suggest new bus stops. This is a modular shelter we created that went on to actually a few different locations along, if you're Nolensville, it's one of our most used corridors for transit. And then we suggested new locations and consolidation for bus stops with these installations. So I know we might be a little behind schedule, so we might just scoot us along.
Gotcha.
And hopefully we'll have time
You guys
for.
got plenty of time.
Yeah.
Do we?
Yeah.
When is
Ooh.
when is our?
I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, in that case.
Yeah.
Kate, I love the way that you have set up the selection process and the the fast tracking of arts and that type of stuff. So, but I'm curious, like how how the selection of location. Like it seems like you've got a good method with the neighbors and things like that. But like you are a relatively small department. Like how do you allocate resources in high impact areas, which I think you've done a good job of, which just curious about.
Absolutely. In addition to our placemaking program, we also have through the planning department a corridors of opportunity program. This is a larger effort through long range, and it identifies corridors of need in the city of Charlotte. In the allocation process, we have bonus points towards art projects and the placemaking projects that's codified in the selection process. We make sure there's a geographic spread, that things, like I said, don't end up in the wedge. And it's also in the application process, we make it so, once again, that individuals can apply. And that eliminates you need neighborhood support, but that can come later, and we help build that process. So making the grant low barrier to apply, offering help in the application process, and giving the technical assistance to the grants that need a little help in materiality, or that they don't fully recognize the potential of their project. We have the urban design hub in the Urban Design Center to offer those resources.
I guess I wonder about like neighborhoods that are maybe have more time and resources.
Mm-hmm.
Like how do you prioritize maybe more disenfranchised neighbor, or is that part of the process?
It's part of the process, yep, and it goes towards that point system. And we you can reapply to grants through a phased approach, but not always. Like and if we spread it out through with equity being, of course, at the front, and working with our housing and neighborhood services to get the word out. So it's not just people who have access to social media who are looking at the process, but we have a robust marketing system to get this out. We do flyers. Staff knows how expensive flyers are to put in the mail, but we take that extra step to make sure that everybody is reached and has the ability to apply. Like I've been on people's doorsteps filling out a paper application to put in a mural. We make it so we are approachable as staff, but we also make sure that people can approach the information. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Hey. So with your tactical urbanism projects, how do you get funding? How do you pay for
There
your...
we go, yeah. So I should have mentioned that this organization that started Turbo was completely volunteer-led. It's just people that wanted to do this stuff. They all had day jobs and other things, so they sort of passed it to the Civic Design Center. We were involved in the formation, but not leading it by any means, which is cool. I mean, it makes it like a real grassroots initiative. So how do we fund it? We get a grant from the city of Nashville, from our planning department actually, to implement a lot of that work. We're partially funded. About a third of our funding comes from grants, a third from private sector, and then various government resources help us to fund the work that we do. And then we get to prioritize how we spend it once we fundraise and do all that stuff.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, it's been super great. We've also had a foundation, Brown Family, contribute a lot to, which is a big philanthropy group in Nashville that is passionate about the built environment and wants to support that work. So
Cool. Let's see what else we got. So for a reclaiming public space discussion, in addition to smaller scale placemaking projects, our office also builds public spaces. Interesting fact about Charlotte is that our park and rec system and City of Charlotte split in the mid 2000s. So our park system is totally independent. It's a county entity from our city space. So the Urban Design Center stepped into this space and has started to build and program and maintain and activate our public spaces. Five Points Plaza represents the city's first public space investment in over 30 years. It's in historic West End Charlotte. Our HBU, Johnson C. Smith, is across the street. And you can see that it's two separate sites, actually. There, across the street is another seating area. We have a splash pad, and it was super important to us as an office to maintain a high quality of design with this first application. We're along the city's Gold Line, and the mural of Lavanya mentioned is on the corner there. This space was recognized at the NC APA conference last week as a public art winner. There's a collection of 10 pieces in this space, from all the way up to tile work to that larger column that's kind of obscured by the tree there. But it was a concise effort to target local artists, bring everybody into the space. And the city of Charlotte has an activator to keep the space programmed with events, somebody from the community. Her name is Jessica. She's great. And it really speaks to the point of putting activations in our public spaces. And this site was, the budget for this was $1 million, but we have smaller scale opportunities here. The Ritz was built with a Lowe's grant. This space is also in Washington Heights. It's a smaller scale site. We put in a patio, a splash pad. This investment represents $175,000. We put it into pavers, and you can see the storage container in the back there for the community to store equipment safely. It's activated on a weekly basis. And then we have a third space at the Green at Prosperity Village. Geographically, this is in the northwest part. The Ritz is center, and 5 Points is west. This was built in 2020 with about $275,000 of capital improvement funds. We do a shelter, there's a spray pad, and once again, the neighborhood leader, her name is Shika. Shika programs this space every time, but identifying those local champions goes so far. And we are going to do 3 more spaces in the Greenville neighborhood, in addition to the Urban Arboretum Trail that we touched on before. And this is just, once again, those smaller spaces for community to use. It's not about bringing people in for these spaces necessarily. It's about working with a community that is there. And these spaces can also be rented by the community through our public space permit project. And it's free to rent any city space. You just can't have any, well, actually, you can have alcohol. You have to apply it to the county, though. But please do not if you want to rent out my Greenville spaces, I swear to God. And it's a big collaboration with risk management. You know, these spaces are an important piece of the Urban Design Center, but it's also a bigger piece of the community. And we hope that both having those smaller community scale placemaking grants all the way up to these larger spaces, we can hopefully knit together these communities that have been impacted so much.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, it sort of leads us into this collaboration discussion. I mean, that's what makes these projects so successful. So I want to talk about, I mentioned Turbo. Another initiative of our organization is called the Nashville Youth Design Team, and this is a part of our youth programming. People who have gone through, we have a educational curriculum for 7th and 8th grade. In 7th grade, they discuss transportation issues and advocacy, and then in 8th grade, they do affordable housing, and actually like build scale models and all kind of great 3-week crash course in sort of civics and those 2 topics. And then those students, and it's in about a third of schools in Davidson County, we just expanded to Chattanooga, and we want to do some stuff here too, so it'd be great. But the students who go through that process then become eligible for our high school internship, which is called the Nashville Youth Design Team, where the outcome is to do tactical urbanism based on some research and things that they want to do. Basically the same work we do, the youth design team does and leads and self-guides that work. And so I want to talk about the importance of collaboration and that project in particular. Dickerson Pike in Nashville is one of Tennessee's most deadly streets for pedestrians, at least in recent years. And so the youth design team looked at some data from another walking and biking advocacy group in Nashville, Walk Bike Nashville, and saw these numbers and said, we need to do something. And this is the condition currently of Dickerson Pike, and probably similar to a lot of streets in Knoxville, sadly. Like we see the staircase that just goes into basically a 3, 4, 5-lane road, and lack of sidewalks. This is this kind of scary thing about, lots of scary things about this, but this is one of Nashville's highest used bus corridors. So how do people get to the bus in these situations, And so lots of issues. It's right along those East Bank areas that I showed earlier. This road is parallel to that 300-acre development. So we don't have infrastructure that's going to support that type of development, and we need to address it. So the youth design team saw that, and they focused. This is an intersection, Hart Lane and Dickerson. It was the deadliest intersection in the state in 2020, and so they pinpointed this and went there to address it. They designed these artistic bulb outs, very temporary in nature, but shortened crossing distance, tightened up turn radius, slow traffic with those measures. And then this is them out there. They went out there and painted it. We had blessings from TDOT, and that's part of the successes, I think, of this project is we were able, the students, we set up a meeting with the region managers, and the students presented these problems and issues and the ways they wanted to solve it to TDOT. It wasn't the design center. We set up the conversation, but we didn't make the presentation. And I think there's a lot of power in that, and youth has historically underrepresented in planning, but if given the chance, they can be catalysts for change. So that's sort of the idea behind the youth design team. It went on, so after all this, the installation took place, it went up and down, but we were able to show the need and slowing traffic. We actually found more people were using it. There was these temporary lighting displays, and maybe it was just to go see it, kind of an artistic piece, but it was there for a weekend night, and we sort of made an event around it. But it got the news there, it got people involved, it got neighbors there just to come see it, and so sort of elevated the issue that way. A few days after that, TDOT announced a $30 million investment in our exact focus area of this street to do complete street overhaul of exactly what we were asking for. So I say that to say, there were many partners involved in this process, and this is sort of the next step. Smart Growth America chose Tennessee as one of their Complete Streets Academy states they wanted to work in. And so the Nashville representatives chose Dickerson again to sort of continue on the momentum of that work. And then it really took all these partners that you see listed here to create and continue this work to advance the concept. So then we went on to do more tactical urbanism. This was probably the most active zone in Dickerson. There's a staffing zone, Piggly Wiggly, a grocery store, Sonic, all kinds of things that get people that are actually walking on this street with no sidewalks. And so we built this pedestrian refuge island. We worked with artist Charles Key, who's a Nashville kind of an icon. I think he's an icon, but he did this sort of Cumberland River piano key installation, and we installed this pedestrian refuge island here. And this just went up a few days ago, so it's just it's minor, but it gives us an opportunity to have conversations with neighbors and business owners about how it could work with sidewalks here and more substantial infrastructure. So, I think along these lines, these are sort of, very micro, fine-grained discussions around how you all can can make change in your community. So, forgot my question.
I think this collaboration has been great.
Oh, I remember, yes. So with your installations, especially the ones you're showing, like we sort of know what it takes to build these types of things. Program, I think you were sort of joking about the alcohol conversation, but alcohol is a great way to activate spaces and sort of program. Like we say it in jest, but like it does, it brings people out, it gets people to a place that they might not normally be at a certain time of day. So I asked kind of a two-part thing, like what types of, you mentioned a lot of programming aspects of these placemaking installations, but what about maintenance too for these things? Because that's been, with Turbo, that's sort of what makes them very quick, is like, we can only afford to have these for really marginal amounts of time. So like, how do your installations are much more like lasting, and I think the maintenance is key on those.
Yeah, it is. This is where being part of the city really comes in handy, because we have general services on call. So it's nice to have our solid waste partners to be involved in this process. We have his name is Alex from General Services. It's one call away. But it's once again connecting with the people on the ground who are using this space on a daily basis, going to our programming staff, and having that direct line to know when to go out. If we leave garbage out on the sidewalk of our public space, but we don't know about it, it's not forgetting about these public spaces are here, and having that community input to be able to call us to go out and service it. And that has been a learning curve as well, because we have run into that issue. When we're 6 people, but we have an entire community to rely on. And it's building these spaces in collaboration with our community partners and having that built relationship with our neighborhood organizations, with the people who are out here, our artists, our creatives who are using these spaces daily, to be able to call us and be like, hey, Kate, come take out the trash. I'm like, I'd be glad to. Just let me know.
Nice. All right.
Cool.
Did you have anything more? Or it's just one of those you could keep going and
We
going?
could go.
Yeah. I think we got a talk show.
So what I'd like to do, we're gonna get ready to do lunch here real quickly, but should we do at least one question? Can we take one? I know there's gonna be a lot, so.
What's the best question?
There's a question back there. Mr. Whitmore, please stand up.
Yeah. So there was a question earlier about mobility, and something that's facing, Knoxville's facing right now is that we're having a lot more days in the summer where we're having 95, 90-degree days that are really threatening mobility and walkability of the city. And so I'm wondering, can you talk about initiatives or design opportunities that start to address that issue in your city? Especially, it's not just threatening people who live here, but people who come to visit and walk the city. So I'm just wondering if there's things you've done. I know you talked about the tree canopy, conservation. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say streetscaping, like when you get opportunities that like there's an investment coming from either the state or the city or something, if you think about streetscaping as addressing those types of things, like that's opportunities for more trees, right? Like that provides more shade. So I'd say like if you can align, and that's a lot of the work that we do, I don't know about your organization, but it's kind of just like make like if there's a metro water project or if there's like some sort of thing, like a big disruption in or a new building coming along, can we incorporate community benefit, especially if we know that those are key issues like near transit or something like that, could be a good way to prioritize certain things.
Yeah, and we work closely with our urban forestry division, and we're in the midst of doing a tree canopy preservation master plan and updating that, and it's preserving tree health, because we have aging trees in Charlotte. Our tree canopy is disappearing by 35%. And it's not just about planting new trees, but monitoring the health of existing trees through our land banking system in our Unified Development Ordinance and our tree save. We also have a program through our tree canopy preservation where they're able to buy parcels and protect trees with that funding. And it's longevity of the tree, planting the tree, and having that having the regulatory teeth to protect your trees and plant with it too. And we also put splash pads in all of our public spaces.
Yes. Big maintenance.
Yeah.
Concern there.
All right, we are gonna shut the questions down right there because lunch is next. But it wouldn't be a sustainability summit.